Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, I am Anna Maria and you are watching Miracle Orchids, the place you can learn everything there is to know about growing orchids. In today's video I am going to show to you how I am going to repot my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis Orchid into water culture, and actually I will use these very pretty gel balls. Then I am actually going to show to you some care tips for this gorgeous orchid. And at the end we are going to wrap all this thing up with some amazing updates that I have seen on my orchids, which I grow in water culture. And remember, if you want more tutorials like this 7 days a week, go ahead and click that subscribe button over here so you know when I upload something. The first thing that you need to do is to wear some protective gloves and very gently squeeze up the pot. I have previously soaked my orchid, as I usually do, in some fertilized water, especially with accent on calcium, which will promote a lot of root growth. And we can see that my orchid, I will actually try to show to you this way, it has a lot of root tips that are branching, which means she really loves this fertilizer that I am applying. She is very much soaking wet right now, but I find the medium is easier to detach from the roots. This will be easy repotting, let's say, because she is potted in peat moss with I think it's only peat moss actually, and I find this to be very easy to take away from the roots. So I really like buying orchids in this medium. And the orchids themselves actually seem to love it. I don't think it is great for orchids in your home, but for sellers, because at the start, at least, the orchids respond very well in it. It is good for them. This is actually decomposed. And I'm very happy that this new growth has new roots, and I'm starting to have a very fat one at the base, so that is great. And I am going to work around the roots very gently until most of the medium will come off, and then I am going to shower the orchid. So the pressure of the water will help any debris that are stuck in between the roots and at which I couldn't get to detach and wash away. You should of course protect the faucet with something so it won't get clogged, but that is up to you. And of course in the middle we are still having the plug. It seems that when the orchid was a seedling it was potted in some coconut thingy, which is of course decomposed, because this orchid has quite a few years. Look at that, look how mushy it is. It is a few years old, maybe even 5 or 6, and the plug is very decomposed, which will promote a lot of acidity, and that is why I made sure I give this orchid prior to repotting. And actually ever since I bought it about 2 weeks ago, loads of calcium, because when the medium is acidic the orchid has trouble in picking up calcium. So very often orchids which are in acidic medium will have at least a little bit of calcium deficiency. So I think me feeding it with more calcium helped these roots start grow again, which is very good, because not only you need to pick up the right moment to repot an orchid in semi-hydro, but also in water culture. So that means that we need to have new growths with new roots, and even if you can, branching roots, because those roots have a lot more chances in adapting in the new environment. So now I'm going to shower the orchid and I will come back. Okay, and I have actually discovered that my orchid, or actually in the same pot I had 2 orchids. These are the exact same age, let's say, but we can see that the left one it is bigger and the right one it is smaller. That is why I always said don't go that hard on sellers when they say the orchid is 2 to 3 years from flowering and it doesn't bloom in that time, because it really depends to the orchid and you never know exactly until you actually see it blooming. For example, this one has 1, 2, 3 new growths, the third one bloomed and it has a fourth one coming. This one again has 1, 2, 3, 4 new growths, the fourth one didn't bloom and it has a new growth coming. So I really believe that it is up to the orchid. One orchid can get or can be actually more vigorous than the other, and you never know. Now you can see that I have cleaned as best as I could the root system. I still have a bit of debris on the roots, but this will come off in time, especially in waterculture. I don't really seem to have dead roots, or not many at least, so I will cut those ones. And before that, actually I see I have a dead root which is stuck to the pseudobulb. Now it is time to spray the orchid with hydrogen peroxide 3%, which will, it is a very good antifungal agent, but it will also kill any possible snails or snail eggs. Although I don't think I had that because the orchid came with a lot of fruit tips. So, just as a prevention, very well, at the base too. I like when I spray with hydrogen peroxide to choose a sprayer which has a very intense amount of spray, so it is not a very fine mist, because you really want to have enough liquid that penetrates in between the pseudobulbs. I had happening that I sprayed an orchid with a fine mist and it didn't reach where a snail egg was, and the snail evolved and it started to munch off my roots, and I am sure the hydrogen peroxide was effective. So I usually like to keep the hydrogen peroxide in the bottle it came with, which will be a very dark colored one, and keep it in furniture where it doesn't have light, because it actually reacts with light and it will lose its effect. So even a very black one, if you have, would be perfect. And now with my sterilized pruners we are going to feel the dead roots. Try to, actually right now I don't need the gloves anymore, I can feel better with my fingers. So the dead roots would be, I see the little seedling pseudobulb came off, it was okay. So the dead roots will feel empty, mushy, hollow, and if you pull away on them, the velamin will remain behind. Like here we can see this is the actual root, the string, and this one is the sponge that protects it. So I'm going to cut those. And not always the whole root is dead, so only cut the dead part. At this stage I am pretty much done. We can see that the bigger division, let's say, has also much more roots, and they are more healthy. It has many new root tips, and this is why I think it is more vigorous, while the other has just a few roots, but I'm happy it has at least this root, which is very good, and it has a few other root tips, so it will adapt too. Also very important at this stage to clean any little sheets that you see, because those will mold. So very important it is to make sure your orchid is free of any dead materials, because in contact with so much moisture they will start to mold and you might get scared actually. So I will now shower again the orchids, because I have a bit of powder, let's say, from the pit moss, and then we are going to talk about how I am going to care for them. Alright, so in my case I am going to keep the orchids in water culture, and because I don't want the base of the orchids to touch the water, and for example this one doesn't has enough roots to keep it on top of the water as I want. This one has, but that is a different story. I put here some gel balls. These are super cheap things. They enlarge in size in water, and I thought it would look really nice in this transparent glass, because they are colorful, so I really like the look of it. It looks very happy, let's say. So now I am going to gently put first the big one with its roots to accommodate in here, and then the smaller one. Very gently, not to harm the root tips. And I'm trying to get the smaller division as close to the gel balls as possible. And I think this looks really neat. Now, of course, in the next period, actually I might add this thing back. At first I took it because I thought it would not be necessary, but it will help the orchid stay straight, let's say. I will bring one more clip like this to put this one as well, and they will stay right. This is what I don't like usually about waterculture. The orchids don't really look very neat, because they lean over. They usually don't have a stabilization in that glass, but now I think it looks really cute. I really like how it looks like. I will add a bit more water, maybe 1 more centimeter. This is fertilized water with calcium. We need to concentrate to give the orchid a lot of calcium these days, because that is what will promote the root tips to grow faster. Now, as for care for this orchid, the Dendrobium Phalaenopsis Orchid is a warm-loving plant, which means that its preferred temperature would be somewhere in between 20 Celsius and 30 Celsius maximum, even 28 if you don't want to stress it. For humidity, she's not fussy at all. She will bloom with every new growth which is mature with a spike from its axis, but it sometimes can produce even 3 or 4 spikes per pseudobulb. Also, the older pseudobulbs can also push up spikes in the next years, so you should never cut them. And a healthy Dendrobium Phalaenopsis should have leaves on the older pseudobulbs as well. As for fertilizer, these orchids do love fertilizer, but not in very high amounts. So in water culture, because again it is a medium, it is a culture with which promotes always moisture to the roots, we care less about burns, because it is quite hard to make a burn to the roots when the roots are always moist, because that means the actually burning of the roots happens when the fertilizer dries, the whole area dries, so the nutrient crystallizes, and that is when the burn happens. But in water culture, in semi-hydro, that usually doesn't happen unless you really go overboard with the level of fertilizers. So I think I will keep this orchid always fertilized. For now I used 80 ppm of calcium, but you can always put about 40 ppm of magnesium, and even add some MSU or whatever fertilizer you want. Never go over 250 ppm in water culture for these orchids, because they really don't need it. They grow big pseudobulbs, but usually rather slow in growth, so usually they produce 1 to 2 pseudobulbs per year. I guess when you are going to have a specimen size, of course it will produce more, but as a general rule, medium-sized Dendrobium will not grow 5 or 10 pseudobulbs per year, so it really doesn't need, I believe, more than that. I think I might be able to. Yes, now it looks a lot prettier. I really love how this gel ball looks like. I think, as I said, it brings me to the idea of happiness. As you can see, I did not cut the spike. This is because the tip is starting to dry and the orchid actually absorbs the energy back, so I am not going to cut it until it will be completely dry. As for light, these orchids like a fair bit of light, but never direct sunlight, because the leaves are quite thick and they can burn easily. They are quite fleshy. What else? I think I pretty much touched base on everything. I'm going to do a lot of updates. I have discovered that in the first days after you transfer an orchid in water culture, it is better to change the water daily, because it will go bad pretty fast, and you can actually help the orchid adjust faster if you change it, because fresh water doesn't contain all that bacteria. When you transfer an orchid into water culture, the roots will start to die, some of them, and it will create a bacterial and fungal environment, which can actually infect more of the roots which otherwise would have survived. So in this case I will change it at least for the next 2 weeks daily, or once every 2 days if you consider necessary. Also, every time I see a root starting to die, to be mushy, I will cut it again, just to keep the zone as clean as possible. And now I will go and do the update on the orchids that I see very good results on, because it's quite early. Alright, and this is pretty much how much water I have used. You can see that the base of the orchids don't touch the water. I want to make sure I will not promote any bacterial rot, any rhizome infections. This is why I am so careful not to promote any of that. And by keeping the base of the orchid on top of the water, that is pretty much all you need to do to help the orchid adjust faster. But I think that once the orchid will produce a lot of fruits, you can renounce to these gel balls, but until then you need to make sure until the roots will be able to push the orchid up enough so it will not touch the base, you can totally use them. They are bio, they will not harm in any way the orchid. Next, here is the orchid I wanted to update you on. It is the orchid, the Phalaenopsis, white Phalaenopsis, which we transferred first in water culture about 3 weeks ago, I think. And I already am starting to see the water roots, as foresaid, starting to emerge. We can see I have one here, I have another one here, and the third one in there. And I also have a brand new leaf. Also, I have started to see that the water goes bad in slower, let's say. So if at first in the first 3 weeks I change it almost daily, now I am changing it every 3 to 4 days. Also, I want to make sure the orchid stays, as I said, with the stem on top of the water, because Phalaenopsis especially are very sensitive to that. Also, I am having here a branch, you can see it, and yeah, I think it looks really good. I'm very happy with my results. Of course, the orchid is receiving MSU fertilizer and calcium, extra calcium added. The spike which I cut did not continue to absorb, which is good, and I am very happy with my results so far. I also like a lot the looks of the glass vases with these gel balls. Next, I thought I would show to you why I think the water needs to be changed daily. This is my Cattleya maxima variety Alba seedling, and the old roots died when I tried to pot her in semi-hydro. And you can see I already have a slimy surface on the pebbles, and the water has been changed actually yesterday. I need to put a bit less water because I see here a new growth, which will actually rot if it stays like that in water. I by mistake yesterday I put too much, but usually it stays much lower. So I will go ahead now and change that. Here I have a Cattleya division, and as for now it is reacting okay in water culture. It's not looking very good on the leaves because those are very old pseudobulbs with some sunburns, but that is okay. Here I have that seedling phal which is sitting in here, and we can see that it stays only on top of the water. The roots stay hydrated, but the stem is not getting into any troubles of rotting. And here I see actually signs that she is going to start a new leaf. In here she's having a sort of a growth, but I'm not sure what that would be. That was there previous to my friend giving me the orchid, but I also see a few signs that the orchid wants to push up some root tips, so I'm getting quite excited about that. In here I have a Dendrobium nobile, which I have put just today in water culture, and we can see that the roots stay moist, but the stem of the plant stays much more up, so it will have air ventilation. Alright, I have also put a Phalaenopsis seedling into water culture, and this Nelly Isler, which is actually quite sickish, and right now it is trying to push up here a spike, which I will actually let it evolve. You should not do that, but I really don't care because I have a much healthier one, so I want to let the orchid do its thing. And I think this is pretty much all, so thank you very much for watching. Leave your comments down below and see you all next time. Bye!